I was once working nights at a hospital for patients with severe mental issues. Very few of the patients were actually physically sick as much, so we often had very little to do throughout the midnight hours. So one night, somebody brought in a Ouija board and a few of us huddled around to ask questions of the spirits. I was very skeptical about it, until the glass we were using suddenly flew off the table and smashed against the wall. That was unnerving, to say the least, and I've never personally used one since. However, that's not really the story I wanted to tell you. This one belongs to my mother. My late mother was an absolutely no-nonsense kind of woman, aka a harden. She wasn't one known for her sense of humor, and certainly wasn't one to tell fanciful tales. So, I've no reason to doubt her word. My mother was a divorcee when she met my father, and it was she who divorced her first husband, Frank. This was in the 1930s. Frank was a bookie and was often out of the house taking bets at places all over town. One night, when my mother had been left alone again, she decided to pop over the road to visit a neighbor friend of hers. They had a few drinks together. Then the woman brought out a Ouija board, and they decided to ask questions of it. My mother couldn't really think of questions to ask, but finally decided to ask where her husband, Frank, was, knowing full well that he was at his office. However, the board replied that he was at a local dance hall. My mother was shocked and asked further questions. What is he doing? Who is he with? Etc. The board told her that he was there with a woman and further revealed that they were having an affair together. My mother, not one to sit back and do nothing, immediately grabbed her coat and dashed out to the dance hall, hoping, of course, that the board was not telling the truth. However, it had been, and my mother found Frank and his girlfriend there and confronted the pair. I can only imagine the scene she created. Her voice, when raised, could compete with any fighter jet taking off. She immediately filed for divorce. From then on, she always blamed the Ouija board for destroying her marriage. But I don't know. I like to think that it helped her. I have a Ouija board buried in my backyard. When I was younger, my older brother and I used one, once. My mom bought it for us, not knowing the risks that are supposedly involved, haunting, possession, etc. At first, we were asking harmless questions like if our crushes liked us, where Mom hid the cookies. I was getting bored and broke our unspoken agreement to keep the questions kid-friendly. I asked it, "When will my brother die?" It creeped over to the 6, then the 7. 67 years old, maybe. I don't know why I asked it, but I was relieved that it gave an answer that was a very long time in the future. Well, after the first creepy question, my brother could no longer return to mundane questions. He was asking it if hell was real, if it could contact dead relatives. He was scaring the crap out of me. I was terrified and close to tears. Then he started talking funny. I didn't recognize his voice, and I ran to go get our mom. When I came back into the room with her in tow, he was laughing hysterically. I mean, doubled over with laughter. He said he made up that whole part just to scare me, and it worked. I was terrified beyond belief that my brother was gone. I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed, turned, had nightmares. The next day, I put on some of my mom's gardening gloves. I didn't even want to touch it with my bare hands. I shoved it in an old duffel bag and buried it. I painstakingly dug a hole, a deep, deep hole, in the backyard and shoved the bag in it. My fear lifted more and more with each shovel of dirt that I threw on top of it, out of sight, out of mind. However, years later, when I looked back at the question I asked regarding my brother's death, I thought I'd come to realize it was just a toy. It was completely inaccurate. 67 my ass, I thought. He was murdered when he was 20. There was no otherworldly knowledge, no foresight, nothing. Just two kids and the power of suggestion. Yet something about the whole experience continued to linger in my mind. I shared my story over time, and after reading through some of the comments, I was sort of blown away. My brother was 13 when we used the board. Maybe it wasn't 67. Maybe it was 6 or 7, meaning 6 or 7 years. Meaning when he was 20 years old. Maybe I was looking at it completely wrong. Who knows? And who knows why I asked that question in the first place? Was I sensing something? Was it somehow giving me a feeling of unease? I don't know, but I kind of want to go dig it up and burn it.